A lot of people think buying a house just means saving up a down payment, but in reality, there are 5 different buckets of money you should be prepared for when you're buying a home. Now, some of them happen before closing, and some of them happen at closing, and some happen after you move in. And if you stay through the end of this video, I'm going to tell you the one financial mistake I see buyers make that it could really hurt them after closing. Hey there, I'm Corie Burke and I'm a realtor here in Yakima, Washington. And one of the things I help people do all the time is figure out if they are financially ready to buy a home. And one of the biggest surprises for people is realizing that the down payment is not the only money you need. So today I want to walk you through the 5 main cash categories buyers should be preparing for: inspection money, earnest money, down payment, closing costs, and move-in or repair money. And I'm also going to show you how some of these costs can actually be reduced down or even negotiated. So the first one we're going to talk about today is inspection money. Your inspection happens after you go under contract typically, and it's a way to do due diligence on the property. It is technically optional, but I always recommend it, even on new construction. A lot of builders don't like that about me, but I require it. And because inspections can save buyers from really expensive surprises. And in our market, most buyers spend somewhere between $300 and $600 total, depending on what inspections they choose. It can be more if they're adding more things onto their inspection, but the age of the home and the size of the home affects that, as well as if they're adding things like, sewer scope, pet inspection, or radon testing. I've never seen anyone do radon testing here where I live currently, but it's important to know that this money is paid out of pocket. It does not get rolled into the loan. You're paying for a service. Whether or not you end up purchasing the home, you're paying for it. It is a sunk cost. You are getting the report, and that is what you pay for. You're basically paying for information and protection to make sure you're making a good investment in this property. And honestly, inspections have saved my buyers from bad houses more times than I can count. Now, one of the best stories I have about this is when I had a client who was interested in a home with a cedar shake roof. Now, the seller, cedar shake roofs kind of always look bad, whether or not they're in good shape, but the seller insisted that there were 5 years left on the roof, and they even had paperwork from a roofing company saying the same thing, that warranted the roof for 5 more years that had just been given to them. And most inspectors are a little iffy about walking on cedar shake roofs because they can be a little bit tricky, but my inspector had done these a lot. He knew how. I made sure when I called the inspectors that we were getting somebody who knew how to navigate these roofs without like snapping off the shakes. And when he got up there, he found literal holes in the roof of the garage that he could stick his fist through. So he took photos like, there's a 5-year warranty on this roof. I can stick my hand completely through the roof of this house. That inspection saved my buyers from buying a house that would have needed a very expensive roof replacement immediately. Because a cedar shake roof, fun fact, is not just like replacing any other roof. When you're replacing it, you actually have to take off all the underlayment. So usually the cost of a cedar shake roof and replacing it, whether you're doing composite or more cedar shake, is at least double. So even when there are warranties like from a builder or from a roofing specialist or assurances, it is still incredibly important to get your own unbiased inspection. Now, the next one is earnest money. This may come before the inspection because you're usually depositing the earnest money after mutual acceptance within a certain amount of days, depending on what you negotiate. It's essentially a good faith deposit. It shows the seller that you're serious about purchasing the home. It is your collateral in the contract. The seller's collateral is the home, yours is your deposit. In Yakima, it's often around 1% of the purchase price, although it really can vary, especially depending on the property type or anything like that. So for example, on a $400,000 house, earnest money might be right around $4,000. But here's the important part that many buyers don't realize. Earnest money is not actually an extra cost. It is something that you pay ahead of time. It is a deposit you put down early in the process, but at closing, it usually gets credited towards your down payment or closing costs. So that money is not just gone. It's not its own thing. It is basically a deposit towards all those things. And your earnest money, you're usually going to have contingencies in your contract and addenda that protect that, like the way the inspection went and you want to terminate as a result of inspection. Typically, the way most contracts are written, you would retain your earnest money in that case. So you're not losing the money, you're just putting part of it down early, and there should be protections in the contract to protect that earnest money. Times when you are risking your earnest money is if you default and don't do what you say you will do in a contract. Now, the third one is down payment. So let's talk about the one that everybody knows about. The amount can vary a lot depending on the loan program and the purchase price of the home. So for example, on a conventional loan, first-time home buyers are putting down between 3 to 5%. The number that most people are aware of is 20%, but most first-time home buyers are between 3 and 5%. Now on a $400,000 house, that might look like $12,000 to $20,000. There are also other options that a lot of people just aren't aware of. For example, VA loans. They can allow eligible buyers to purchase with zero money down, and they can even get a duplex, triplex, or fourplex with it. We have used these before in the past. This home is not on a VA loan, and the reason that it's not is because we actually already had another home where we used to live previously on a VA loan. We did not have enough entitlement left to buy this home with it. Now we would have access to that again because we've sold that home. And you may, if you have not served in the service, you may still be eligible for a VA loan if you have the other extenuating factors, like you are the child of somebody who passed in combat. There are other ways that you can use that. I recommend, if you had somebody who served in your life that is not a part of your life anymore, maybe they passed away or anything like that, you may want to look and see if you can qualify under their entitlement. And then there are also down payment assistance programs. They can help cover part of the down payment or even the down payment in full. One of the biggest surprises I see is how many people assume they can't buy because they think they need 20% down. And honestly, the amount of misinformation out there about mortgages is crazy. I would say over half of the people I talk to are actually more ready than they think they are. And even if you're not ready yet, a lender and a realtor can still usually help you create a step-by-step plan to help you get there. Now, number 4, the next thing we're going to talk about is closing costs. These include things like your loan fees, your title and escrow fees, your appraisal, recording fees, prepaid taxes and insurance, and interest. And closing costs are typically around 2 to 4% of the purchase price, depending on the price in the loan program and the loan provider, of course. So if, again, we're looking and using the example of a $400,000 house, that might be somewhere between $8,000 and $16,000. But here's the cool part. Closing costs are often negotiable. One strategy I use frequently is asking the seller for closing cost credits. Now, what this means is that the seller contributes money toward your closing costs as part of the deal, as part of the structure of the contract. And right now, because homes are sitting on the market longer than they were a few years ago, we're seeing more opportunities to negotiate seller credits than we have in years. So if you only have a little bit of money, it might actually be better to negotiate your closing costs in and use the money towards down payment and get more money down. There's a lot of different things that can go into play here when you're negotiating it, but I'm going to give you one of my favorite examples of how a first-time home buyer who was putting 5% down on a higher priced home, they asked the seller for 3% towards closing costs. Now, the buyers didn't actually expect to get the full amount. They didn't actually need the full 3%. They actually needed closer to 2% because it was a higher priced home, but the seller agreed. So they agreed to give them a full, I think it was like $18,000, and their actual closing costs were much lower. So they had extra credit left over, and they used that money in another way. You don't have to, there is a whole long list in the contract typically of how you can use this credit. And one of the ways you can use it are prepaids. And so they decided to prepay their PMI. They had to bring a little more money to the table. It wasn't enough to cover their full PMI, which is private mortgage insurance if you're putting down less than 20%. They lowered their monthly payment by almost $300 per month. And it only worked because they asked for the credit in the first place. Now, the 5th category, and this is a category that people often forget about, is money after closing. Now, this is not your emergency fund, but even if a home is in good condition, most people want to do something when they move in. It could just be things like painting, flooring, furniture, landscaping, small repairs that you notice, but they weren't worth asking the seller for during the negotiation process. Moving costs a lot of money, and you have an increase in usually takeout food and things like that. So moving is expensive, and these things really add up quickly. So you want to make sure that you have some cash set aside for life after closing during this hectic period, because while it is fun, it is exciting, it can get expensive fast. Now, here is the scary warning I mentioned at the beginning. One of the biggest mistakes I see buyers make is completely draining their savings to purchase a house. Now, ultimately, it's not my decision. My job as your realtor is to explain the pros and cons and to help people make the best decision for themselves. I do not make decisions for people, but I have absolutely seen buyers empty their savings account to buy a home, and then something unexpected happens. A furnace goes out, a pipe leaks. I even had a brand new construction home that had been inspected, but they can't see behind the drywall. Now I do pre-drywall inspections as well, but there was a pinhole leak. So this wouldn't even been caught on a pre-drywall inspection, let's be real. It had a pinhole leak in a water supply line. It flooded the house about 6 months after closing. Things happen and they're crazy. And so this is why I always tell buyers, the goal is not just to buy the house. The goal is to comfortably own the house. If buying the home completely wipes out your emergency fund, you may just not be ready yet. We can get a lot of those other costs down. We can get down payment down usually. We can get closing costs down. We can get a lot of those costs down, but you have got to keep your emergency fund. And home ownership works best when you still have financial breathing room after closing. One last thing I want you to understand before I leave you today is that programs like VA loans and down payment assistance can be absolutely amazing tools to help get people on the property ladder. But remember, if those costs are being financed into your loan, it can increase your monthly payment, and that can make it take longer to build equity because it's going to take longer to pay down because it's going to also add to your principal and recoup the costs of buying. So it's really important to make sure that your payment is still really comfortable for your lifestyle, especially even more so if you're taking advantage of one of these programs, because it's going to take you longer to build equity. Now, if you're wondering what buying might actually look like for you, then best next step is talking to a lender and a realtor locally and looking at your specific numbers. And if you're thinking about buying in the Yakima area, I am always happy to help walk through that with you. And if you're buying anywhere else in the world, I am happy to make a recommendation as I'm part of the world's largest referral network for realtors. Now, if this video is helpful, please make sure to subscribe. And if you're trying to decide whether making a move makes sense for you, you can watch another video here. YouTube thinks you might like this one. See you in the next